Hello, welcome back to our channel. This is block 4 and we are going to learn about adapting other business processes, and under this there are some subtopics. And the first one, we are going to see common issues with e-commerce, what happens after a sale, how to choose a payment service product. Then we're going to learn about fraud prevention, tips for fraud prevention, and then we have another subtopic, shipping and delivering goods. Under that subtopic, there is handling and shipping and managing returns, element of shipping policy, terms and conditions. And we're going to look at one after time. We're going to start with receiving orders and correcting payments. Under that, we have common issues with e-commerce. Number one, we have payment security. We have currency exchange. This is where you're going to change the currency. For example, if you're using Tanzania money to change into Kenya shillings. The other thing is payment declined. This is whereby, for example, if you're using an ATM and maybe it has no money, so um, there is no transaction. Um, there is no transaction and limit limited payment options. This is whereby a business has limited means of payment. For example, if you're using M-Pesa and maybe many clients are using ATM cards. Okay, the other thing, no, and sorry, an effective, secure, and trustworthy payment processing service is of paramount importance to your success. And the other thing we're going to look at is what happens after a sale. After getting a product, maybe the buyer wanted, you will buy, the buyer ships, and then you pay. And there are so many ways of making payments, including, for example, M-Pesa, PayPal, and others. How to choose a payment service product. Does it work in my country? For example, when using M-Pesa is only used in Kenya. So you might find other countries that not use M-Pesa. What happens in case of fraud? Are you in a position to deal with frauds? And what will happen in case? What will what will happen in case of a fraud? How can my business withdraw from the account? How often will my account pay me? Maybe weekly, monthly, or anytime one needs to withdraw the money. What are the fees? For example, uh, you might find some means of payment uses more transaction fee compared to others. How how do I integrate it in my e-commerce. That's another point. The next subtopic we're going to look at is fraud prevention. Under fraud prevention, we're going to see to learn about flows of cash in e-commerce. The first thing is buyers receive invoice. The next thing is buyer transfer payment to service provider. The other step is service provider certifies that then goods get shipped, and then money is transferred to the seller. Okay, the other thing we're going to look at is tips for fraud prevention. And one point to note is, by default, sellers are not protected as buyers. Tips for fraud prevention. Number one, design proper terms and conditions. Number two, use common sense to evaluate suspicious orders. Do not hesitate to request additional information to keep everyone from fraud. The other thing is treat customers with respect. Cancel the order and refund the money if you suspect you're being scammed. Okay, another thing we are going to discuss in this blog is shipping and delivering goods. First thing to learn in this subtopic is handling and shipping. What happens after an order? When a client or a buyer makes an order, you need to mark them or mark the item that the buyer has chose. The next thing is the buyer creates an invoice. The other thing is to handle now that item. The next thing is to ship to where the buyer is. The other thing is to deliver and then fulfill. Okay, the other thing we are going to discuss is managing returns. Make sure you develop your own return policy. That is, if maybe the product that the buyer asked for does not satisfy the buyer, to avoid losing that client or that buyer, you need to return. In case a buyer buys something but does not satisfy them, the buyer returns the item to the seller, maybe for exchange. And then we have element of shipping policy. We have handling costs. We have shipping provider. We have shipping companies restrictions and clear message to customers. For terms and condition, a clear terms and condition create trust and avoid conflicts. Let's now meet to the next and the last module. Thank you.